Welcome to the live, everyone. So glad you could tune in. This morning, I'm getting some studying and started a little late. I woke up a little late today because it was a little noisy last night, so wasn't able to go to sleep that early. But welcome, everybody. So glad you could tune in. Hello. Is it Sharir? Welcome. Glad you could tune in. How are you doing this morning? Please consider staying tuned. Hi, welcome, M. How are you doing this morning? Hello, hi. Morning, everyone. Morning. So this morning, I'm going to be watching some videos for the LSAT video explanations, and then after I'm going to do some drills. So guys, stay tuned if you want to see me studying and consider subscribing for more study videos like this. Check out my channel. I do a variety of different videos, or I make a variety of different videos, but feel free to like post a comment and I'll read it when I take a break from my schoolwork. My phone's all the way over there, so I have to look at my computer to see what you guys are typing. How are you? Is that what HRU is? I'm doing good. How are you doing this morning? Doing good this morning. So let's get into it, guys. This morning I'm going to be doing some LSAT studying, so feel free to post a comment. I'll read it when I take a break. And let's get into it. Don't forget to like the video and consider subscribing. We're like 5 people away from 890 people, so you could be the 890th person. Never know.
Hi, this is Matt at LSAT Lab, and today's lesson is on must-be-true questions in the logical reasoning section.
Oh, also, one thing I want to say really quickly. I saw this video online. They said when you're studying, like it's, they said when you're studying, take your non-dominant hand and like try to scribble with it as you like reading something or watching it, and they said it helps with memory retention. So I did it yesterday. I think it helped. I'm not sure, but I'm like, it can't hurt compared to what I've been doing. So I'm just going to continue doing that. Welcome, Ava. You think you have a demon child? Go to your local church. That's my best recommendation. Go to your local church, mosque, or religious center and get the pastor or the person in charge to come to your house and visit your demon child. Also, act normal. Don't act like you caught on what's going on in that. And you'll be good. I watch a lot of horror movies. I know what to do.
4% of all questions in logical reasoning are must-be-true questions, so they're not a very common question type. But they're a really important one because they set a good foundation for how to think about logical reasoning, and the complexity involved with these questions typically tends to make them harder than normal. So it's a harder question type for a lot of people. In this lesson, we're going to look at how to spot a must-be-true question, an example question that contains conditional logic, an example question that contains comparison.
She's looking at my wall for 15 minutes straight. Ask her if she wants something to eat. If not, I still recommend going to that church. And you should be good. LM must be joking. Demon child. We don't know LM. That's what we're trying to figure out. Maybe take a Epsom salt bath for your cramps. That should help. I did that one time when I was running, and it helped. But, magnesium for cramps. So somebody just recommended something for you. But let's go back into studying, guys. But feel free to keep your comments coming and definitely subscribe because later on I'm gonna tune into live and that's where I'll be able to like answer your questions or concerns. And I want to be updated on your demon child, Ava. So I will hope to see you later or in another
question that
live.
contains causation. And then we'll finish by looking at the trap answer patterns that you need to know about in order to be able to get down to the right answer. Take a look at this question step. If the statements above are true, which one of the following must also be true? Well, the words must be true are contained within the question stem. This one's pretty obvious. It is asking you to find what must be the case. In this one, it asks which one of the following can be logically inferred from the statements above. Inferred is the same on the LSAT as must be true. So if you see them asking for what can be inferred, they're asking you for what you know to be true. Which one of the following can be properly concluded from the information given? So something that can be properly concluded is the same as something that can be properly inferred, both of which are things that must be true. In this one, we're asked to find a consequence of the view above. Well, that means what follows from that view. What do we know to be true? This one says, if the statements in the passage are true, each of the following must be true, except this is asking us to find what must be the case. But it says that 4 of the answer choices are things that must be true. The one that does not have to be true, the one that could be false, is going to be the right answer. So now that we know how to find a must be true question, let's talk about the process that you want to use when working on one. Well, the first step is to find the related statements. So there will be multiple statements within the stimulus, and they should be talking about something in common. They typically will link together through that relationship. So if there's a term that's connecting 2 different statements together, it's through that term that the inference is going to be made. Right? So we want to look out for terms that are repeated across the sentences. We want to think about the kind of reasoning that those sentences contain. So are we working through an if-then relationship, like if A, then B, if B, then C? Or are we looking at a comparative relationship where one thing is bigger than or faster than something else? We want to use our understanding of the connected term and the kind of relationships contained within those statements in order to better anticipate what an answer might sound like. What could those statements imply, or what do those statements imply that we can then use to kind of pre-phrase what the answer would sound like? And then we want to work through the answer choices, generally working from wrong to right. There might be times when you're on an easier question and you'll know exactly what you want to be looking for ahead of time. And you'll find it, you'll pick it, you move on. That's fine. But you may also encounter many situations where you can get rid of a couple of the answer choices rather quickly. But to dive deep and to really figure out what each of the remaining choices is saying, you need to spend a little bit more time. Right? So in those cases, you'll probably want to work from wrong to right, where you're going to use trap answer patterns to help you make eliminations so you can get to the right answer. So the first example question we're going to look at in this lesson is on conditional logic. And conditional logic is the major player when it comes to reasoning structures in must-be-true questions. 75% of must-be-true questions contain if-then conditional logic. So if you have 2 if-then statements and they contain a common term, you might be able to connect them together using the transitive property in order to get an inference, something that must be true given those 2 relationships. Well, if we know if A then B and if B then C, what can we infer? Well, using the transitive property, we can link through the B and infer that if A is true, then C is true. This particular structure where we have 2 premises, 2 pieces of evidence that are if-then relationships and a conclusion that is also an if-then relationship that follows from them, there's a name for this particular structure. It's called a syllogism. And it's one of the most common structures that you're going to see on the LSAT. So now it's your turn. Let's try this example here. Given these statements, which of the following must be true? Hit pause, see if you can find the right answer. And then come back and we'll review together. All right, welcome back. So Let's start with answer choice A and see if we can figure out whether that is something that we can prove. If K, then P. Well, what we're going to do is look at the statements that involve a K and a P and see if we have either the K on the left of one of the relationships or the P on the right of one of the relationships. We're trying to imply if K then P. We're trying to prove if K then P. We're going to need to see a K on the left of a premise and a P on the right of a premise. When we start with the first premise, we actually know if K then M. And if we look at the second premise, if P then not M, we can take the contrapositive of that and we know if M then not P. Remember, a contrapositive is when you reverse and negate a conditional relationship. So now we have if K then M and if M then not P. So what can we infer? We can infer if K then not P. But that's different than if K then P. In fact, A is something that must be false, is not something that must be true. We look at answer choice B, if P then not L. So what we're going to look for is either a P on the left of a premise or not L on the right of a premise. We have a P on the left in the second premise, so we know if P then not M. Now, in terms of L, we have an L on the right in the third premise, and we have an L on the left of the first premise. Well, an L on the right isn't going to allow us to infer not L. It would allow us to infer L, but that's not the same. And we can't really get to it anyways because we're right now at not M. But if we take the contrapositive of the first premise, if we know if not M, then we know not L and not K. We don't necessarily care about the part with K, but we know not L. So if not M, then not L. And so between the second premise and the first premise, we are able to infer if P, then not L. That must be true. That's the right answer. Now for answer choice C, if M, then L, what we want to do is either see if there's an M on the left or an L that's on the right. We have an M on the right in the first premise. We have an L on the right in the third premise. So let's go ahead and add the third premise in and figure out if we can get an M on the left somehow. If we take the contrapositive of the first premise, we get if not M, then not K. And if not K, we know from the third premise that that L is implied. So we can get to if not M, then L, but we can't quite get to if M, then L. We can get close, but not quite. And so C is not something that must be true. That's wrong. So now let's take this idea of working with conditional relationships and linking them together in order to derive inferences and apply this to a real LSAT question. So go ahead and give this question a try on your own and see if you can find an answer choice that you like. and when you're ready to review this together, hit play. All right, welcome back. So what are we told here? If the price it pays for coffee beans continues to increase, the coffee shop will have to increase its prices. The word if gives us a conditional relationship. So if the price paid for beans goes up, then coffee shop is going to have to increase their prices. And then we're told in that case, either the coffee shop will begin selling non-coffee products or its coffee sales will decrease. So if they, in that case, is referring to if they're increasing their prices, or that is reflexive, referring back to the previous term. And then we have an or statement on the right side of this relationship. Either they're going to have to start selling non-coffee products or their sales are going to decrease. Next, we're told, but selling non-coffee products will decrease the coffee shop's overall profitability. So if they sell non-coffee products, it's going to decrease their profits. And finally, we're told, moreover, the coffee shop can avoid a decrease in overall profitability only if its coffee sales do not decrease. Only if tells us that its coffee sales not decreasing is a necessary condition, and the coffee shop can avoid a decrease in overall profitability is a sufficient condition. Now, if we take the contrapositive of that relationship, we end up with if the sales decrease, then that decreases profits. And so now we have the four statements from the stimulus that we can look for related terms that connect together. We know we're working within conditional logic, but what are the connections that can be drawn from these statements? So if the price paid for beans goes up, then they're going to have to increase their prices. And if they increase their prices, that means that they're going to either start selling non-coffee products or their sales are going to decrease. Notice if they sell non-coffee products or their sales decrease, either one of those implies that they're going to have a decrease in profits. And so we can infer from these relationships that if the price paid for beans goes up, then they're going to have a decrease in profits no matter what. And so that would be my prephrase of my best guess at what the right answer is going to say. Answer choice A says that if the coffee shop's overall profitability decreases, the price it pays for coffee beans will have continued to increase. The if tells us what's the sufficient condition, that overall profitability has decreased, so we have a decrease in profits. And it tells us that the price it pays for coffee beans is the necessary condition, so the price paid for beans goes up. Answer choice A has the right terms of our prephrase, but it has the direction of the relationship backwards. And so answer choice A represents the most frequently chosen trap answer pattern on must be true questions, which is that of a reversal. Answer choice B says if the coffee shop's overall profitability decreases, either will have begun selling non-coffee products or its coffee sales will have decreased. The word if tells us how to organize this relationship. So if we have a decrease in profits, then either we're selling non-coffee products or the sales are going to decrease. So we have these terms connected in relationships, but the relationships imply the reverse. So again, this is another reversal, tempting but wrong answer choice. Answer choice C says the coffee shop's overall profitability will decrease if the price it pays for coffee beans continues to increase. The word if is buried in the middle of the statement there, but it's really important because it tells us that the price paid going up is the sufficient condition and the overall profitability going down is the necessary condition. And so this actually matches our prephrase. So this looks like a strong contender. Let's hold on to it. If we look at choice D, it says the price it pays for coffee beans cannot decrease without the coffee shop's overall profitability also decreasing. Well, if we want to put this into an if-then relationship, we are going to use the word without. Without is going to introduce the necessary condition. Right? So the profitability decreasing is the necessary condition, but the word without is special in that it's going to negate the sufficient condition. So the price it pays for coffee beans cannot decrease. And when we negate that, it says if the price it pays for coffee beans does decrease. Well, if the price it pays decreases, then we're going to have a decrease in profits. Well, we know that if the price it paid for beans increases, we would have a decrease in profits. So answer choice D is fairly close, but it's got the wrong sufficient condition. It's an unsupported relationship. We know that if the price paid goes up, that they're going to have a decrease in profits. We don't know that if the price paid goes down, they're going to have a decrease in profits. That may be true, but there's no way to prove it with these statements. Answer choice E says that either the price it pays for coffee beans will continue to increase or the coffee shop's coffee sales will increase. We can write that as an or statement, but we can also interpret it into an if-then relationship. We can say, if one of those things doesn't happen, then the other must happen. So we could write it as, if the price it paid for beans does not go up, then the sales have to increase. And if we compare that against the statements in the statements that we have, we know that if the price paid for beans goes up, that the sales are going to decrease. This looks like a negation of the relationship that we can get close to proving. So it's another common trap. Reversals and negations are going to be what they use in order to get an answer choice to sound very, very similar to what you're looking for, and yet have to say something a little bit different. And so answer choice C is the right answer. So now let's look at an example that involves comparison. 19% of must be true questions involve comparative reasoning. An example of what comparative reasoning looks like is we might have, let's say, city A is more populous than city B. We got more people in city A than city B. And they might also tell us that city A is geographically smaller than city B, so it takes up less space. If we know those two things are true, what else do we know? We would know that the density of city A is much greater than the density of city B. And so that's the kind of relationship that we're looking to get from a comparative reasoning structure. Typically, comparisons take one of two forms on the LSAT. Either they're comparing two different things at a point in time, like in this example here, or they compare one thing over two different points in time. Let's say they were comparing city A today versus city A 10 years ago. That would be another way in which they could get a similar but somewhat different sounding comparison. And the interplay between those two is very interesting, because if you know that you can infer a comparison between two different things at a point in time, they may give you an answer choice that compares a thing at two different points in time. That might sound very tempting, but would be still wrong. So go ahead and try this example on your own. When you've found an answer that you like, hit play again, and we'll work it through together.
Another set of practice problems. Welcome to the new people. Welcome AAB. Welcome E. Welcome. What is that? Yeah, some of your names. Welcome, everyone. So glad you could tune in. It's morning time where I'm at, so can't go to sleep. I don't like sleeping late, so I'm not doing that. So definitely consider subscribing to the channel, guys. Welcome. Go outside. It's morning. Everywhere's closed. Places, the gym's not open today since it's the holidays tomorrow, so I can't even go to the gym today. I think I'm going to do my sit-ups / push-ups inside today, but I can't run, so that kind of sucks. What else with these comments? Do you support LGBTQ? Sure. Yeah, everyone's welcome on the channel. Oh, you saw my shirt. I just bought it because it was really soft, guys. It's a nice shirt. Soft material. Definitely subscribe, guys. Like the video. Share it. Everyone is welcome on Uniquely Mia's channel. Positive comments, always welcomed. So definitely join the channel, guys. I make travel videos, graduate student videos, study videos, as you can see right now, technology videos. If I find something that was challenging for me technology-wise, I make a video. I have one video that kind of blew up because I didn't see any other videos like that. So definitely subscribe and check out those videos because it may be useful to you. You never know. But back to studying, guys. Also subscribe because later on I'll be cooking. So if you want to see me cook, come back to the video for that. But that's going to be in a new live, and the only way you'll see that is if you subscribe, because then you'll be notified of when I go live when I'm cooking, guys.
All right, welcome back. So what are we told?
To do this practice problem. Evelyn and Jane are each suffering from a headache.
in this question? Well, we're told that no headache pill stops pain more quickly than Danaxil. So that means that Danaxil is quite possibly the fastest headache pain pill out there. But by saying that no headache pain pill stops pain more quickly, that doesn't exactly tell us how fast Danaxil is or how fast the leading competitors are. There's a range of possibilities that would satisfy that idea. But we know that there are no competitors that are faster than Danaxil. So maybe Danaxil cures headache pain in about 20 minutes, whereas the competitor might take 25, 30. But what's deceptive about that claim is that if the leading competitor stops pain in 20 minutes exactly, then it's not lying to say that no headache pill stops pain more quickly than Danaxil. This leaves open the possibility that the competitors are also curing headache pain in about 20 minutes or 25 minutes or 30 minutes, 35 minutes, anything that's at least as long as Danaxil. That's all we care about. Okay? So it's more like a weak inequality rather than a strict inequality. This statement is not saying that Danaxil cures headache pain faster than its leading competitors. Instead, what it is saying is that nobody is faster than Danaxil, which leaves open the possibility that they all cure headache pain at the same exact speed. So now let's look at the choices. Answer choice A says that Evelyn's headache pain will be relieved, but Jane's will not. Well, the idea that Jane's is not going to be relieved, it does say in the stimulus that all headache pills can stop your headache. So if anything, answer choice A is probably contradicted by the statements. Answer choice B, Evelyn's headache pain will be relieved more quickly than Jane's. This would be a very, very tempting answer choice. In fact, most people probably pick this answer choice because it sounds like the statement is implying that Danaxil is the fastest. But that's not necessarily true. It could be the case that they all cure headache pain in exactly the same amount of time. And to say that Evelyn's headache pain will be relieved more quickly than Jane's is simply too strong. It's more than what we know, and that makes it wrong. Answer choice C says Evelyn's headache will be relieved at least as quickly as Jane's. No, what they were hoping for is that you were going to read answer choice B, fall in love with it, pick it, and move on to the next question without reading C, D, or E. If you at least, even if you loved B, you should have a chance to correct your error by internalizing what C is saying. Well, if you like the idea that Evelyn's headache pain will be relieved more quickly than Jane's, you should also like the fact that Evelyn's headache will be relieved at least as quickly as Jane's. The difference being is that C is a little bit weaker way of saying the same thing. And so actually C looks like a really good contender. Answer choice D says that Jane's headache pain will be relieved at the same time as Evelyn's. Now, if you weren't aware of the difference between answer choices B and C, the fact that answer choice D is pointing out that things can happen at the same time is your clue about the difference between them. B is suggesting more quickly, C is saying at least as quickly, D is saying, hey, there could be a tie, and that tie should help you understand the difference between answer choices B and C. It should also help you understand why D is wrong, right? That relationship is unsupported. Answer choice E says that Jane will be taking Danaxil for relief from headache pain. Well, we don't know that. We don't know that Jane will be taking Danaxil. If anything, we know that all headache pain pills can stop your pain, so that's actually an unsupported relationship. And so answer choice C is correct. Let's look at another example, this one involving causation. Now, causation is rare on must-be-true questions. It can still occur, and so here's an example question in which we find causal reasoning at play. Good. Go ahead and give this one a try, see if you can find an answer that you like, and then when you're ready to review together, hit play again. All right, welcome back. This question is asking for what can be properly inferred from the information above. So inferred sounds like must be true. And we're given a series of statements. The first statement saying that the calm, shallow waters of coastal estuaries are easily polluted by nutrient-rich sewage. And so that's saying that the sewage causes pollution. The second statement says that when estuary waters become over-nutrified, as a result, algae proliferate. The words as a result are critical there because they're helping us identify the causal reasoning. The pollution causes algae. The next statement says that the abundant algae in turn sometimes provide a rich food source for microorganisms that are toxic to fish. So the algae cause toxic organisms. And the last statement said thereby killing most of the fish in the estuary. So the toxic organisms kill the fish. So this example presents a causal chain where the sewage causes pollution, the pollution causes algae, the algae causes toxic organisms, and the toxic organisms cause a die-off of fish. So this causal chain allows us to make inferences. We can move along the causal chain in a forward direction the same way we can with conditional relationships. Now we've notated it a little bit differently because we want to be clear about the difference between an if-then relationship and a causal relationship. An if-then relationship is a correlation, is a perfect correlation in one direction between two events, whereas a causal relationship is a correlation between two events. But it implies that one thing is the thing that creates the next. Right? It's a deeper form of a relationship than a simple conditional relationship. Now, if we look at the choices, answer choice A says that fish in an estuary that has been polluted by sewage are generally more likely to die from pollution than are fish in an estuary that has been polluted in some other way. So now this is comparing an estuary that's been polluted by sewage and another one that's been polluted in some other way, and the relationship or the likelihood that the fish are to die. Well, we don't know anything about estuaries where they've been polluted in some other way. This is simply either out of scope or is an unsupported relationship. The more likely to die creates an unsupported relationship, and polluted in some other way
hierarchical. Yet the public work department, although of the statements are true? Which one of the following cannot be true? Most veterans, and especially those at university research but most veterinarians choose to be professions primarily because they love animals. One person they consider interested in biological science. I just read most veterinarians and especially those at university. Which one of the following statements follows logically from the statement above? None of the students taking literature are taking, so none of the students taking literature are taking business and several. So the students taking business guys, I'm gonna do my rest of studying. Well, you guys, there's some people watching. I don't know. I guess I'll stay on. More people join.
Hi, this is Matt. What else have that? And today's lesson is on flaw questions.
Welcome, Uniquely Mia fans. So glad you could tune in. Right now, I'm doing some studying, guys. So definitely stay tuned and subscribe if you enjoy watching me study. If not, and you want to see me cook later on, subscribe so you can find that video later.
In the logical reasoning section, about 14% of all logical reasoning questions are flaw questions, making it one of the most important question types to learn because it's the most common question type in the logical reasoning section. In this lesson, we'll cover the following: how to spot a flaw question, what the processes you want to take when approaching one, what are the reasoning structures common to flaw questions, and some examples thereof. And then we'll also look at the different trap answer patterns that you need to know about in order to make those eliminations. So let's get to it. In this question stem, it says, which one of the following describes a flaw in the reasoning of the argument above? The language that tells us that this is a flaw question is describes a flaw. This question says, a questionable technique used in the argument above is, so the right answer should represent a questionable technique used or a flawed method of reasoning. This is definitely a flaw question. This one says the argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that it takes for granted. Well, the fact that it's vulnerable to criticism identifies this as a flaw question, but the fact that it says takes for granted that indicates that what we're looking for, the flaw that's contained in this argument, is that there's an assumption made, and we need to express that assumption in the right answer. This one says the argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that it fails to consider that. Now, the vulnerable to criticism tells us it's a flaw question, but it fails to consider that tells us that the idea that's in the correct answer should be something that would weaken the argument and should point to the connection across all of the questions in the assumption family. So the way we approach flaw questions is the same as everything else in the assumption family. So that's the sufficient assumption questions, necessary assumption questions, flaw questions, strengthening questions, and weakening questions. The process is the same for everything because they're measuring our ability to evaluate arguments. In order to get there, we need to be able to identify the conclusion and find the evidence for why it's true. That sets us up to be able to figure out whether or not the conclusion follows from the evidence, and in every one of the questions in the assumption family, the answer is no. The conclusion does not follow logically from the evidence. And it's our job to figure out what the gap in that reasoning is. So we need to evaluate the argument. Now, to evaluate the reasoning on any logical reasoning question, we want to use reasoning structures. We want to start to look for comparison, causation, and conditional logic within the argument. That'll help us better figure out what the shape of the pieces are in the puzzle that has been presented to us, and that should help us better figure out what the missing puzzle piece looks like in an argument. Once we find that gap and that missing puzzle piece in the argument, then we can use that to anticipate what an answer would sound like, and then use our understanding of trap answer patterns to eliminate tempting but wrong choices. 71% of all flaw questions involve comparative reasoning. So let's take a look at an example here. Go ahead and give this question a try. Push pause, and when you're ready to...
Some members of our labor union are calling for an immediate strike. Okay. But a strike would cut into our strike fund and would, in addition, lead to a steep fine, causing us to suffer a major financial loss. Therefore, we must not strike now. So you don't want to strike because you don't want to spend your money. Okay? The union member's argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that it is to consider the strike might cause the union to suffer financial loss.
To discuss this one together and play again. All right, welcome back. So let's start by finding the conclusion of the argument. In the middle of the argument, we're given the word but, which is a pivot, away from an opposing point and towards the author's point. And then we're given the word therefore at the very end, which indicates the conclusion of the argument. So we know the conclusion is that we must not strike now. Now that conclusion is essentially advocating for one of two choices, whether we should strike or whether we should not strike. The argument or the union member gives us reasons not to strike. But before we get there, we're also given a reason to strike, which is that some members of the labor union are calling for immediate strike. So we don't exactly know why they're calling for it, but we do know that it's supported by some members of the labor union. It doesn't indicate much of a benefit, but it does seem like it's pro-striking. Now, the reasons that the union member gives for not striking are that it would cut into the strike fund, and that it would lead to a steep fine, and that those would cause a major financial loss. Right? So there's a negative impact financially. So the negatives, the drawbacks associated with striking. But in order to be able to compare these two choices, in order to be able to say which one we should go with, whether we should strike or whether we should not strike, we need a full picture of both outcomes. And while we're given some of the reasons not to strike, we haven't really ever considered what it would look like if we didn't strike, and what would be the financial losses then. Without knowing the financial losses or the financial benefits under both scenarios, can't really compare the two choices. So this is a classic incomplete pros and cons list. If we're asked to describe the flaw in the reasoning, we can just say that it has failed to consider information that would help us figure out the relative merit of the two choices. That it's failed to include information that would be relevant to the decision. If you look at answer choice A, it says it fails to consider that a strike might cause the union to suffer a financial loss even if no fine were imposed. Well, it does not provide a benefit of a strike. In fact, it provides a drawback associated with striking. Instead, answer choice A says that it fails to consider something that would strengthen the argument. It should be it fails to consider something that would weaken the argument. So A is moving in the wrong direction, and it's wrong. Answer choice B says fails to.
Welcome all the new people. Welcome, Elsie. How are you doing? I'm doing good today. Hi to you as well. Some person said I don't support it. You don't support what? If you don't support my channel, thanks for leaving a comment. That's okay. Not everybody's gonna like it. If you don't support studying, I do. Back to studying, guys. But thank you to everyone tuning in. Welcome to all the new people, to the loud viewers, and to the silent ones.
To define adequately what constitutes a major financial loss. So this one is that it's failing to define something. And if it fails to define adequately a term, right, what that means is that it's referring to a very particular flaw, where a key term has been allowed to shift its meaning over the course of the argument. And in order for answer choice B to be the right answer, we would need to see a major financial loss used twice, and for it to have different meanings throughout the course of the argument. In this case, it's only used once. It never shifts this meaning, and so it's simply describing the wrong flaw. Answer choice C says, fails to consider that the benefits to be gained from a strike might outweigh the costs. This says fails to consider that, that's important, and that the benefits to be gained might outweigh the costs. Right? This is saying that we haven't really considered the benefits that might come to us from striking, even though we have considered the costs from striking. And so this looks like a really strong contender. Let's hold on to answer choice C. Answer choice D says takes for granted that the most important factor in the labor union's bargaining position is the union's financial strength. Well, taking something for granted, right? That means that it's assuming something to be true. And it's usually referring to it is referring to a necessary assumption. So is it necessary to the argument that the most important factor in the labor union's bargaining position is the union's financial strength? It doesn't need that. It doesn't need to assume that to be true. And so D is presenting something much stronger than what we need to assume in order for the argument to have a chance. Answer choice E says it fails to establish that there will be a better opportunity to strike at a later time. Fails to establish means that it assumes something to be true. Does this argument assume that there will be a better opportunity to strike at a later time? The argument doesn't really consider whether we should be striking in the future, only that we shouldn't be striking now. And so answer choice E brings up an irrelevant relationship, making answer choice C the right answer. All right, so let's look at another example. In this one, we're going to look at one that involves causation. Go ahead and give this one a try. When you have an answer that you like, hit play again, and we'll review it together.
Reasoning in the driver's argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the ground that the argument driver, my friends say I will one day have an accident because I drive my sports car recklessly. But I have done some research and apparently minivans and larger sedans have very low accident rates compared to sports cars. So trading my sports car in for a minivan would lower my risk of having an accident. The reasoning in the driver's argument most vulnerable to criticism infers a cause from a mere correlation, relies on a sample that is too narrow, mistakes a condition sufficient for bringing about.
Right, we're going to start by finding the conclusion again. We have this word but in the middle of the argument, giving us a pivot away from an opposing point. And then we have the word so, giving us a conclusion at the end again. So the opposing point is that my friends say, I will one day have an accident because I drive my sports car recklessly. And the evidence for the driver's conclusion is that I have done some research, and apparently minivans and larger sedans have very low accident rates compared to sports cars. That's a comparison being made between minivans and larger sedans have a lower risk of accident compared to sports cars. So we can put them on this risk curve. And the conclusion is that trading my sports car in for a minivan would lower my risk of having an accident. And the key words there would lower. The driver is suggesting that merely trading in the sports car for a minivan, it will cause a lower risk. Right? So we have a cause and effect relationship in the conclusion. We've got a correlation between minivans and larger sedans and lower accident rates, but then a conclusion that suggests that a minivan would cause a lower accident rate. So we're moving from correlation to causation, and if we're asked to describe the flaw, we're going to say the argument mistakes a correlation for cause and effect relationship. Answer choice A says that it infers a cause from a mere correlation. That looks really good. Cause and correlation, right? Inferring a cause from a correlation. It's exactly like we prefaced. Let's hold on to answer choice A. Answer choice B says that it relies on a sample that is too narrow. The keywords there are sample being too narrow. One potential flaw would be an unrepresentative sample, but there's not really a generalization happening within the argument. The argument doesn't say that because something is true in some cases, that is true in other cases. And so B correctly describes a flaw, but just not a flaw that's happening in this argument. We can describe the incorrectness of B in that it's the wrong flaw. That's going to be a really common trap answer pattern on flaw questions. Look out for answer choices that correctly describe a flaw, but just not one that's actually happening in the argument. Answer choice C says misinterprets evidence that a result is likely as evidence that the result is certain. Well, the key here is that it's switching between likely and certain. The conclusion, trading my sports car in for a minivan would lower my risk. There's nothing certain about that. Lowering the risk does not mean that the driver faces no risk. So we're not talking about a certain outcome in the conclusion. It means we can get rid of answer choice C because while it is describing a flaw, it's not a flaw that's occurring within this argument. Answer choice D says mistakes a condition sufficient for bringing about a result for a condition necessary for doing so. The key terms here being sufficient and necessary, telling us that the flaw being described in answer choice D is mistaking a sufficient for necessary condition. That's reversing the logic of a conditional relationship, but this argument doesn't contain conditional relationships. So again, this is a flaw, but it's not a flaw that's happening in the argument. Answer choice E says relies on a source that is probably not well informed. So the key words here are the source is not well informed, which implies that we're looking at an answer choice that describes an inappropriate appeal to an authority, right? Because so-and-so said something is true, therefore it's true. And maybe that person is not well informed and doesn't really know the subject. And this is a flaw. You will see an inappropriate appeal to an authority. on the LSAT, but it's not a flaw that's happening inside of this argument. So we can get rid of answer choice E for describing the wrong flaw, and that brings us back to answer choice A. Infers a cause from a mere correlation. That's the right answer. Now, one more example. We're going to look at one that involves conditional logic. 23% of all flaw questions involve conditional logic. Go ahead and give this question a try on your own.
The reasoner in the argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the ground that the argument. Some anthropologists argue that the human species could not have survived prehistoric times if the species had not evolved. Hey, I could have been an archaeologist. There's nothing new to find. That would have been cool. Oh, wow. Some anthropologists argue that the human species could have survived prehistoric times if the species had not evolved to the ability to cope with diverse environments. However, there is considerable evidence that prehistoric species related to early humans thrived in a diverse array of environments. Okay.
When you have an answer choice that you like, hit play, and we'll look at it together. All right, welcome back. Okay, we're going to start with the conclusion again. And we see the word however in the middle of the argument, so we know that we have a pivot here. We're pivoting away from the opposing point and towards the author's point, and then we get the word hence at the end, so we have the conclusion at the very end. And the conclusion is that the anthropologist's claim is false.
My head is wet.
So what is the anthropologist's claim? The anthropologist is claiming that the human species could not have survived prehistoric times if the species had not evolved the ability to cope with diverse natural environments. The most important thing to notice in there is the word if. If is an organizational language cue that tells us that what the anthropologists are claiming is a conditional relationship. It's an if-then idea. So it's usually a good idea to go ahead and see what it is that they're suggesting. The anthropologists are suggesting that if we had not learned to cope with diverse environments, then we would not have survived.
Nope.
Now, the conclusion of the argument is that this claim is false. Remember, so we want to make sure that we understand the conclusion is the refutation of that conditional, not the conditional itself. And the evidence is that Australopithecus afarensis, a prehistoric species related to early humans, also thrived in a diverse array of environments, but became extinct. So it did cope in diverse environments, but it did not survive. And that is the evidence for why the anthropologist's relationship is false. To better see the relationship that's being refuted by the author, it might help to take that relationship and take the contrapositive and express it in more positive language. So the anthropologists are claiming that if we could survive, then we had to cope with diverse environments. In order to refute a conditional, you need to do two things. You need to meet the sufficient condition and deny the necessary. But notice, in this case, the evidence does not show that Australopithecus afarensis has survived but did not cope with diverse environments. Instead, it shows that Australopithecus afarensis, it coped with diverse environments and did not survive. So this evidence doesn't meet the requirements for refuting the anthropologist's claim. In order to do so, it should have showed that Australopithecus afarensis survived but did not cope with diverse environments. If we looked at the anthropologist's claim as saying in order for humans to cope with diverse environments, we would need to survive, then
answers 8. Okay. Alright, guys, I'm gonna take a little break. And I'll come back. When I'll come back, I'm gonna do some drills for this flaw questions, flaw reasoning questions. What are you studying for the LSAT? Yeah, law school admissions test. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this live, and thank you for 890 subscribers, guys. We did it. We hit 890 with this live, 10 people from 900, and we're so close to 1,000. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm a graduate student studying public administration, criminal justice, and I'm essentially on a goal to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and TikTok. So you can go over and follow me on TikTok as well if you would like to, at Uniquely Mia. I post more like outfit videos there, and Eat With Me's on TikTok. So Uniquely Mia, my social media handles. But thank you so much for your support, guys. Once we hit 1,000, we can get monetized, and I'm trying to meet that monetization goal so I can potentially pay off my undergrad student loan debt, graduate student loan debt, and future education student loan debt. So your support and subscriptions mean a lot. So thank you so much. When will you be back? I'm coming back literally in maybe like 30 minutes, an hour, or probably like in 15 minutes, because I have to cook today and I don't want to cook late. Like, I'm a little bit hungry, but I know if I wait to cook until I get hungry, the process will just be more terrible for me, if that makes sense. So I'm going to cook my lunch/dinner and my meal prep for the week today. So I'll maybe back in like 15 to 30 minutes. So definitely subscribe if you want to see me cook, because I'm going to start a new YouTube live video for that cooking video. Just so I know, because YouTube pushes videos more when it's a new live. And then depending on the title, people may join it because they want to see me cook. And right now this title for this video says studying. But hey, DJ. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hopefully you guys are doing good today. But yeah, welcome to the Uniquely Mia community. Thank you so much for subscribing and for your support. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I love making videos for you guys, going live for you guys. But once we hit 1,000, just know that you guys are kind of paying me for free in a way, because I'll potentially get paid for doing live videos and making videos for you guys. But definitely subscribe and stay tuned, 15 to 30 minutes. And we'll do some cooking together. So see you soon, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see me cook. Bye.